Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Chris Brackett. You're watching the LandLife podcast. LandLife podcast is brought to you by Herman Brothers Realty. I'm a broker in Illinois, and I'd love to sell you some land. I'd love to help develop your land. I'd love to come do a consult. I just like really teaching people and helping people, and I made a living doing it. And now I'm here to entertain you. It is November 17th. It is the beginning of Illinois gun season. There is a lot of gun seasons happening right now across America. Muzzleloader, firearm in Illinois, we call it gun season because it's a firearm season. That means muzzleloader, pistol, shotgun, straight wall cartridge. Now in rifle, that's like a 350 Legend type situation. I don't know much about them, but I'll bet you there's a whole bunch of deer going to die because Illinois residents haven't been able to shoot anything besides a coyote with a rifle our entire lives. And so people are going to want to see what those bullets are doing, what that big straight wall cartridge that they think is going to shoot 350, 400 yards. And there is going to be the exception out there of some great marksmen and some guys that are really into the ballistics of certain calibers and making sure they're custom. But really, that's a 200-yard gun. If you can't do that with your 20 gauge slug, you're probably not sighted in well enough. You probably don't have good enough optics, or you probably haven't been trained to shoot a 3-inch group at 200 yards with a 20 gauge slug gun with a rifle barrel. And these are just the same guns, but now you're getting into a rifle kick in Illinois and across the Midwest where you can use these straight wall cartridges because I don't really know, but everything is money driven. So something has to do with the government where these straight wall cartridges, they're going to be able to, go after certain things and calibers. And I don't really know why, but I do know that for the youth and for the women and for the smaller frame males, I don't want to make it sexist or thing about youth, but I do know that they don't kick as much. Right. So if you've shot a shotgun, if you're from New York or Ohio or Iowa or Illinois, you have taken a beating shooting 12 gauge, 20 gauge slugs, and they have just taken a beating on your body shooting them over and over. I don't think that they're making as many slugs as they used to, but if you've shot a slug compared to like a straight wall 350 Legend or a 300 Blackout, I think a 300 Blackout's a straight wall. But if you've shot those, you'll know that they don't hardly kick at all. Now, the 12 gauge or a 20 gauge slug gun kicks the crap out of you. The rifles don't kick as much. So I think they burn a little cleaner. I know that the rifles that are being shot in Illinois have to be either modified or without a magazine in the gun. It has to be a single shot rifle. But if you guys are listening to this and you've never shot if you shot a ton of big deer and a nice little buck comes by, don't just shoot it because you've never shot one with a rifle. I mean, it is a free country, but I'm imploring you not to. Don't just shoot the deer just to see what the gun does, but I can't stop you from doing it. Just think about it. Just think about it. Think about it. And if there's a little doe out there that you think, oh, that's going to be a perfect little eater, make sure you look at it through your binoculars just one extra time, because I'm going to bet you if it's by itself and you're like, oh, that's a doe and it's by itself, there's like a 70% chance that sucker has little bitty buttons on it. And that's your, in the next few years, buck crop. So just think about it. It's a long season. You've got the 3 days this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The weather's only going to get better on Saturday and Sunday. Finally going to get some cold temperatures in here. I've got some stories already from November 17th today of Boone and Crockett class whitetails hitting the ground. 5-6-year-old just hit the ground. I just got a phone call of a buck up fighting with another buck last night, ripping through the CRP and just got dropped. And he is a hammer, and congratulations to that man. Just cool beating around the antlers and stuff. And so that's all happening right now. These bigger deer are coming off these does, but it's gun season, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You've got plenty of time. We've got Thanksgiving week. You can take a chill, eat some turkey. These deer are going to get wound up because it's going to be cold. And next gun season is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. After it's been cold, after these deer start getting on their feet to feed a little bit, they're going to be doing more deer stuff So don't feel like you just got to pull the trigger this weekend. Take your time, enjoy being out there, enjoy just sitting and taking it all in. Don't put the pressure on these spots and move these deer around, because they're going to go to the neighbors and get killed, or they're just going to, get moved off of your property. Kind of enjoy it. Be a woodsman. Enjoy the just being out there. Go old school and sit by a tree with a orange cap and an orange vest, and just go sit there, man, in the middle of the day and have your lunch or sandwich overlooking a creek or a bluff. Those are kind of the things that I can tell you. If the pressure's getting to you and you feel like I haven't seen any big bucks or rutting behavior, go be out there in the middle of the day. Don't go out till 8:30 or 9. Creep into your spot, hunt your way in, sit down on a high spot and see where you can see a long distance, sit on the edge of a field with the wind in your face and enjoy this time, because it's going to be really mild temperatures the next couple of days in Illinois. And then you guys' gun season, a lot of people are hunting. This is going to drop tonight. You're going to have Saturday and Sunday gun, maybe next week if you're in a different state. And then Thanksgiving week is going to be so good for whitetail deer. I said the 8th through the 16th, and I think that we proved that, you know, that 13th, that 14th, that 15th, a lot of really big deer died. And then now here we are moving into the 17th, but we've had 2 days of 70-degree weather leading up to. So, if we were hitting for baseball predictions, if we were hitting for baseball averages, we'd be hitting in the Hall of Fame, because I believe that out of those days between the 8th and the 16th, those 8 days, I will believe that half of them were really good hunts, even though you had some deer reports coming back that it was non-existent movement because of the trail cams. As I told you in the preface it, the other podcast before this episode, I don't know, 11 through the present, these last ones, I've been telling you the trail cameras are lying. They're even lying right now. If you're getting a picture of a big deer and it's like every couple days or every once in a while or at night, that deer is still there in the daytime. You just have to be there when he stands up and moves. He's just not moving hundreds and hundreds of yards. He's moving 100 yards. You just have to be really smart about your approach, play the wind, and don't push him off your property. If that deer is showing up at night, that deer is there during the day. If that deer is showing up during the day, that deer is there 10 times more than you think he is. Do not believe the technology and cameras. I think that is the thing that keeps coming up this whole entire 2023 season is don't believe the trail cameras. The deer are moving. They're just not moving far enough and in patternable circumstances, because they're not going from food to bed, bed to food. They're not going food, staging area, mingling back to bed. They're not going from bed to snack station, kind of socialized area, and then going to food, because they haven't been food driven. They're going from bed to their little deer orgy, and then going back, and then just kind of being in these really weird places, these little sex holes where they're creating baby deer and they're fighting. They're just not moving very far. And so if you know that, don't go blow up your property because you have some, inkling to, I got to find out where the deer are. No, man, still hunt through there. Listen with your ears. You're going to hear we haven't had any wind for like 2 weeks in Illinois. And so just go listen in the woods, wait for the woods to come alive. The colder the temperatures, weather is the number one factor, in my opinion, over all rutting behavior or anything. If you get cold weather, you can have these big giant beasts that are wearing these, giant fur coats and running around all full of fat and testosterone. Weather is going to dictate everything when it comes to really any kind of hunting. Even the opposite for turkeys. When you get cold weather and stuff, they're balled up. It's early in the season. And when it comes to deer, it just makes them move. It makes them want to do deer stuff. It makes them want to go farther and travel farther and burn calories, because burning calories, walking and staying warm and survival, it's what they're built for. They're literally built for this stuff. So if they're going to be doing that, man, this movement they're doing right now, they're still just kind of locked down. So I'll just get on to November 17th, man. You're going to still have what I consider some of the coolest days to hunt, that I've killed some really big deer on the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th. I can remember in New York, hunting in New York, I was invited to go hunt with some Army guys and a really great group of guys, and I hunted the Army depot out there, Seneca Army Depot, and I actually drew a white deer tag. It was a 1-day hunt. It was on November 16th, so yesterday, and I shot a white deer and a white buck. I have him mounted, and shout out to those guys. Shout out to General O'Neill as well. Met him there. Went to his 3-star, I think it was 3-star ceremony in Kansas. That was an incredible story, but I got to meet a lot of great people from there, and was invited by some really good guys. And so that was on the 16th. We drove home through the tornado on November 17th. This was 9 years ago, I believe. And then we got home, and on the 18th, I had this really big deer that I had just not very many pictures of, called moose buck. And moose buck was a 180 something inch deer the year before, and I actually caught him on the ground on the year previous. I think it was on the 17th. Yeah, so I killed him on November 18th, I believe. And on my, how'd that go down? Oh, we drove all the way through the night. One of my nephew's birthdays. Shout out to Trip Bullard. Happy birthday. So he will be 10. Man, is that 10 years ago? And on that day, I was hunting, and I had previously shot a deer the year earlier that was just one of these stacked bucks. He was 170, 180 inches, and he was coming down a power line, and we actually spotted him midday, and he was traveling about noon, and he was traveling down through this power line. We got on the ground with him, and he came up to 40 or so yards broadside, with a little bit quarter. I shot him, and he was so strung out that he dropped and took it in the shoulder, and I never saw him again. A year later to the date, same power line. There he is, bedded down on this power line, been on the trail camera all night, was going to pull a trail camera. It's how Moose Buck Food Plot got its name. We went down and we're checking this trail camera, and I look across the valley, and there's this big buck staring at us. Thought he was hidden. And so we actually got out, got my bow, and I crept up on him, and I shot him at like 73 yards in his bed. Well, I don't recommend that to everybody, but at that time I was on fire. I could hit anything, and I was really dialed. And 73 yards, put it right through his lungs, and he ran and piled up. And as he piled up, that became famous for being the moose buck plot. And that's that 365 days a year in that same area. That still rings true, even though it's a little bit later in the season. That's the number one thing for deer is like, or for big deer, I think, is 365 days a year. From the time you saw this deer or had trail cam pictures of him, I believe that deer will be in that same area, right? So that happened a year apart around this time. Shot the white deer. And then another deer that I really remember very vividly being killed on November 18th and 19th were deer that I hadn't had a chance at them all year, kind of like a year like this year where half my bucks right now haven't appeared. And I really think what happens is these big matures really get locked down to an area, not necessarily locked down with a doe, but at a really small area, and we don't see them. And we have to wait for something to change, whether that is the weather, whether that is hunting pressure from the side, let's say the side of the pressure of the neighbor, or some draw, or a farmer picks some field or tills up the ground. Something has to happen, and then that buck will show you his card, right? It's all about if you've got all these cards in front of you, and you're holding your hand, and you keep playing the wind, and you keep playing the weather, and you keep hunting these spots that are bulletproof to those things, and you just haven't seen that buck, man. you have to remember and you have to stay mentally in the game to where all he's got to do is show you his card. And if he shows you that card, you can then lay your hand down and beat him. And I really think that that is the part where, as we got close to this gun season, we all kind of need to remember that all we've talked about this year is how fat they are, how much they're not moving, how great an acorn crop it was. They're not on the food plot still as of yet. I talked to Wesley Delks at Real World, and what he was seeing, and he'd been watching deer just kind of start on soybeans a little bit, and that would make sense. We've had a couple freezes. We got some freezes coming up next couple nights, and I found that those bucks really, or those deer, just start hitting soybeans after a really hard freeze. They get crunchy, and they just kind of like them better. It hardens up that that seed in there. And so I think these deer are just going to start hitting the clover. They're going to start feeding a little bit. They kind of have to, because they've been on a hiatus for so long. And I think the bigger deer, when it comes to this time, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, you'll just see a big deer that's been locked down to his area, like we were talking about, just all of a sudden appear, and he'll be there once or twice. He'll get a little bit of food. And this is really when I think a deer will really start fighting for an area. And then they'll take that big jaunt a half mile or a mile away, and they're going to do one or two really last ditch efforts to start finding these does that are in these little woodlots, these little draws. This is when a big deer will die a mile and a half or 2 miles from his home. And so that's why I implore you, if you're trying to kill a big deer, you have to be the trail camera and be out there all day long. Like you have to be that if you're wanting a shot at some of these bigger deer, because they're gonna leave their territory. They're gonna pop up on the trail camera. They're gonna be there. They're gonna be there for maybe 3 to 5 days, depending on if they find a doe that hasn't been bred or is coming into estrus. I believe half the deer have been bred. I believe the other half are in the midst of it, and this is when your big battles with 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old deer are happening. This is when they get in trouble. This is when they beat the crap out of each other, and they all break up all their antlers, and you'll see them fighting. And I think you're going to see a lot of deer as this little cold front approaches, and these bigger deer are running out of does in their little core areas. You're going to find some of these younger does that probably don't know to just go to the buck and kind of stay with him. I think they're going to be scared a little bit. They're going to be running, and you're going to see these bigger deer kind of chase them in places where they're like, why aren't you stopping? I don't really, I really think that I want to hit on what I talked about on the other podcast this week, or earlier this week, was I think a lot of people believe that the buck runs the doe into submission. And that's just not the way it is. That doe, because of sunlight and body chemistry, is going to ovulate at one point or another. They're going to ovulate in certain times. No matter if a buck chases her or not. It doesn't matter if 15 bucks are chasing her or not. When she comes into estrus, she comes into estrus. And just like the body chemistry of all female creatures, all male creatures, they're going to give off pheromones more than others. Some does are going to be wild and running all over and putting the scent off, and they're going to attract all these males. Some of these does are going to be really timid and be in small areas, and they're not going to attract a lot of bucks. You're going to watch half of the breeding be done by these smaller little bucks that are just in the right spot at the right time. You're going to see spikes. You're going to see 6-pointers. You're going to see these little 8-pointers breeding these does. You're going to see these big bully bucks breeding these does. And they're just kind of, I think it has to do with the doe maturity. I also think it has to do with how many does you have. So I have one farm that has probably 20 does to 1 buck ratio, which is probably way out of whack, but there's not really anything I can do about it. I don't own that property. I own another property, or I own a property that probably has a 6-to-1 doe to buck ratio. And that could change in a week. because of the neighbors on gun season, whatever they had the opportunity, depending on how many hunters they let in, depending like so that one I don't really mess with the balance at all. So I'm in a really weird place where I don't have a lot of places that I promote taking does because I can't control the whole situation. One, there's just so many deer that it's tough to manage, and the other one, I don't want to take any deer because I would rather have somebody that's never shot a deer take it, or I'd rather have the neighbors take it. But when the neighbor says, we have so many deer, we don't really have that many deer, but everybody's in the impression because Illinois back in 1989 and 90, 91, 92, 93, they even gave out pins that had a slogan, shoot a doe so the herd won't grow. If you guys think that the government is really being out the best interest of the whitetail deer herd for sure in the state of Illinois, you have another thing coming. They're expecting you to govern yourself. And if you're governing yourself with actual knowledge, you're probably a really smart, understanding the environment. But if you were just going off of trail cameras or what is being said at the local restaurant or bar or your buddies or whatever, and you think that there's so many deer that you need to be the governing force behind those deer, nah, that's not true. And if you are a farmer, a lot of times you'll find the farmer go, kill all those corn eating suckers, eat all them corn eating suckers. Well, here's the problem. They take a lot of their damage off of what's being eaten in their fields. But I'll promise you one thing, when it comes to corn, I'll bet you that raccoons, the fact that we don't have a raccoon season all year long and we can only hunt them or trap them from like the 15th through January or February, when they actually don't like to come out as much, is really a proof that the Illinois Department of Natural Resources really doesn't understand. And I know Missouri just opened up this predation for like turkey eggs and these little raccoon, these little baby bears. I mean, they're like little bears, man. They eat everything. They eat turkey eggs. They eat frogs. They eat everything, man. And there's no control over them. These raccoons are eating all of the corn and knocking it all down, and farmers and landowners are like, kill all the deer, but they never say anything about the raccoons. So those are one of the misnomers that's out there in the world. So then the farmer puts a bounty out and says, hey, you can have permission to hunt, and then, hey, make sure you kill all the deer. Hey, I want one for my freezer, but make sure you kill 5 or don't come back. I just don't think that that's right. That's my opinion. Because I believe it is misinformation by a lot of stuff that's been propaganda put out for years. Here we are trying to grow 5-year-old deer, and the farmers on the neighboring field, that their property, we're actually making their property go up because the PI is not really going to change unless the farmer has input into it. But a farm like mine, here I am taking it out of production, putting it into wildlife habitat. Am I affecting their harvest? Yeah, probably. As far as their yield, but the equity that I'm putting up in the neighborhood for being next to my farm, I could sell their property for more than they could sell it if it was just a regular farm. Now it's got rec value and equity in that. That's a whole nother conversation. And if you're looking at like the soybeans and how the farmers say, well, the deer are eating all my soybeans. Well, if you have a 300-acre farm, let's say a 300-acre farm, let's say 150 of it is corn and beans. And if you plant the majority in corn, whatever bean field you plant, dude, half that thing's gone because soybeans just don't regenerate it themselves. You know, if the farmers were to go in there and say, hey, I'm going to plant double rate on the inside, I don't know, 50 or 60 yards next to the timber, you're going to be able to get your normal yield off of that. Like there's a lot that hunters can do. I'm a hunter. If I leased a piece of ground or if I was hunting a piece of ground, I would pay that farmer for that input, that output that the farmer is getting smoked on deer. I'll pay that couple grand to make sure that I have the farm. So like, I think hunters and farmers can work together, landowners and hunters can work together better. But I think there's just a miscommunication, and I got to believe in the good of the process. But speaking of the good in the process, is all of that was to say, we are out of whack in understanding that the government is not looking out for our best interest when it comes to the whitetail deer herd or the raccoons or the turkeys, and it's just a mess. If something's happening here with the video on the YouTube, guys, I apologize. It's a little bit of miscommunication between my computer and my camera. Now, look for new movement with these whitetails with the pressure. A lot of people are still going to be driving deer. A lot of people are still going to be getting out of their stand at 9 o'clock. They got to be to work, or they got to, go help their buddy with a deer, and they're going to be tracking a deer, and they're going to be pushing these deer that are locked down out. And you're going to see a lot of movement, man, from 9 o'clock till 1:30 or 2 o'clock. So if you can put up with it, pack a lunch, take a backpack, make sure that backpack's orange or got an orange flag on it, because you don't want to cover up your orange when you're walking in the grass or in the brush. Keep that orange on. That orange isn't for the game wardens to find you and give you a ticket. That orange is to keep you alive. So don't be a dumbass, okay? Wear your orange, man. Wear your orange. And in Illinois, you got to wear a full orange cap. You can't use one with the brim black and the writing on it. You got to be full orange. I didn't make the rules. I'm just trying to help you all out. You don't want to get in trouble. If you guys are breaking the law a little bit and filling tags or whatever, just, I know from example, if you're going to do it, make sure you keep the deer in the state of Illinois. You're only going to get one ticket. But that Lacey Act, something else, taking it back home across state borders, they're going to get you for a felony. So if you don't know what the Lacey Act is, look it up. Look up the Lacey Act if you're taking it across state borders. Man, I'll tell you what, I had a crazy week with friends and clients. One of my buddies was hunting a real big deer and went in the middle of the day in this little thicket. And he actually was after this real big deer. He outsmarted him the first day. He was putting on his jacket. Deer walked by, couldn't get a shot. Went back in next day or the day after that. Big deer comes out trying to corner a doe, and he shoots it. And I don't know if it hit a limb or something, but he wounds this buck. This buck runs off and tucks his tail and runs, and he's like, I don't know where it hit. I think it hit some brush. So he goes down, he finds a couple pools of blood, and I'm like, dude, you got to get out of there. And so he backs out, might have backed out and then went back in, looked for blood, or kept hunting. And I just said, hey, I don't think the way you're describing it, you hit that buck. Good. And here, I'm trying to mess with this video for y'all. And so as we kind of went through what happened during the shot and what's going on, we determined that it wasn't a lethal shot. And I said, well, you just should keep hunting it. And boy, he was down. He was super down. Me being a deer therapist, I just start walking him through it. And I'm like, this deer has no idea. If that deer didn't smell you, he has no idea what happened. So I just tried to keep his head in the game and fervent and just in the game. I said, that deer will be back in less than 5 days, for sure. 3 days. You'll have him on camera. You'll see him again. He said, I'm going to take a break from the deer. I'm telling you, I don't think it was 48 hours later, and there is this sucker in broad daylight, in front of the camera, in front of the tree again. I think that tree was like another 100 yards down, but I'm telling you, if they don't smell you, they don't know what happened. They're going to be in that same area. They might be a little slicker to that little area and that little, like kind of, pinch point, I guess you would say, that little pinch point or whatever. Like, he probably won't go through that again, but he'll go in that same block. So you just got to maybe tweak your setup and hunt him, keep hunting him. He will be back. So good luck to him on that. And then we had a big buck down this morning. I got a phone call at 8:30 that already tagged the target deer on this farm that I sold to a gentleman, a friend. And it was probably his biggest deer. This deer was freshly broke up. This is a 5.5, probably, I think, a 6.5-year-old deer. Just the size of it was enormous. This guy was freshly broke up on one side. There was another big 5-year-old that left the property that night that looked pretty banged up when he was leaving. And so these bucks were clearly fighting over a territory that these does had been feeding and bedding in, the switchgrass and the other stuff. Kind of like, it's kind of set up like my property that I have. And this one was hightailing it out of there with his nose in the wind in the dark last night. He went in there this morning and knocked down this giant, and this giant was actively by himself searching this native grass and the edges of the food plots, and was actively on his feet at 6.5 years old. Had clearly won the fight to be in this area, and knocked him down, and he is an absolute toad. So that just goes to show you, this is one of the first times that he's been in to hunt this specific deer. This deer had been random, but I don't think he'd seen him in 2 weeks. I don't think he had seen him since it got hot and since it kind of went on lockdown. And then there he is, opening morning of Illinois deer season, and knocks him down. And now he's with me on the tagged out list. So big deer hitting the ground, but you just have to go to those spots that have the big deer. They're going to come off lockdown. They're going to search for another doe. You just have to play the wind. The main thing right now is when you enter your property, just because it's gun season doesn't mean to throw the wind out the window. If you're entering this property and it's horrible and your wind's going to blow through the whole property, you have to figure out how you can cut that down, whether that's coming in from a different way, walking a lot further, or hunting like closer to the truck and maybe in an open field. Because a lot of times if you have 100 yards or a couple 100 yards of open field, you can kind of get away with it with your wind. But don't really invade. Like, I'm seriously trying to help here. Don't go invade those bottomlands. You're just going to screw them up. Like, you want to ask yourself, am I being strategic about this? Or am I just going in and saying, I don't care, I'm just going to hunt for 3 days and I'm just going to see what comes by and I'm just going to shoot whatever and then drag that out and make all this commotion? Is that really what you want to do? Or you want to be strategic and really try to give yourself the best odds possible? I mean, that's what I think you have to ask yourself right now in these few days of gun season right now, right? Man, I have this thing that we need to discuss. This is a true story that happened to me yesterday and has been happening on property that I have, every property that I have. Okay. I am not secretive about where I hunt and what I have on my property. It is my business to sell farms and set farms up to grow mature deer. But as Don Higgins sometimes talk about, this is the real world. And I know a lot of people talk about, well, Chris, you now have money in land and you have all this money that you paid for land. You're a big money hunter. Now, I learned real quick, coming from a mom that was a school teacher making $30,000-$40,000 a year all growing up. And my father, worked a nice job, but I was relatively on the lower half of the income spectrum. But I can tell you this, that I grew up hunting permission pieces, and I learned real early in my life that what I wanted, I was going to have to make money and work to get the type of hunting that I wanted. I hunted public ground. I hunted pieces that I don't even know if I should have been hunting because they were like public ground. But they weren't really governed back when I started bow hunting. You could just kind of hunt wherever back when we started bow hunting in Illinois, because no one bow hunted. They all gun hunted. They all had an orange hat on. They went out with an 870 or a Mossberg 500 before rifle barrels, and they shot ounce lead slugs at everything that moved. And you had tags. And now you have so many tags that you can buy in the state of Illinois that it's just not governed. You have to govern yourself, and you have to be in control of what you want to take off of a property. You just truly have to. And so back when we bow hunted and gun hunted, man, I used to be bloodthirsty and I used to kill them all. But it was also one of those things where there wasn't a lot of bow hunters, and I would rather bow hunt than gun hunt. But I still believe that gun hunting is still a tradition and something really cool. But I really don't think that you need to no holes barred attack the whole property and kind of ruin the woodsmanship of the property and the hunting. Now, that's my opinion. But my bone to pick is, if I buy a property or if I lease a property and I choose my freedoms to plant corn there. Now, do you believe that if I planted corn and I did what it took to plant corn or sweet corn or regular corn, Do you believe that it's okay that the neighbor should come onto my property and pick my corn? Not pay me, just pick my corn. Or do you believe that if I planted, all this giant garden on my property, do you believe that the neighbor or anybody that butts up against me that touches my property, should they be able to come fill up their pickup truck or their little basket, or where what if they just took their hat off and they just put a couple potatoes in there, and when they put a couple ears of sweet corn, just enough to feed their family, just enough, just a little bit. It should be a courtesy, right? If they're my neighbor, they should just be able to walk over and whatever. I mean, if they wanted to come over and they wanted to sleep with my wife, just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, or I don't know, pet my dog, or I don't know, I had more firewood than they did, so since they touched my property, should they be able to come over and get just a little bit of firewood? Just not even tell me, just get a little bit of firewood and take it back. Should they be able to come over and get a little bit of Wi-Fi? They're close enough that they can get a little bit of Wi-Fi. They don't have to pay for it. What about my cable? Where does it end? What if they were to share my well because their property butt up against mine? Where does it end? Well, if I have signs up, is that not a courtesy? Hey, don't come over and sleep with my wife. Don't come over and eat my garden. Hey, don't come over and slaughter my pig or my cow because I got a fence up. Do you guys know where I'm going with that? And there's a lot of people like, oh man, he's off the deep end. No, I've really been thinking about this. This is a discussion we're having. I haven't told you where I stood, but I am asking the question. Should you be able to make out with my wife? Let's go there. Or if I do all the work and I don't have any kids, and I spend every dollar that I've ever had, that I have, let's say, extra, or I have to either put into going on vacation. I don't go on vacation. And I work every day. I work. I don't want to work. I should be a smart business owner, is not work as hard as I do, and I should have other people doing that job. I don't want to brag about I work so hard. I don't want to work. I want to be smart and let my money work for me, and my equity in my businesses and what I have going work for me. But somehow I'm dumb like that. And so I work. So I buy miscanthus. So if I have $20,000 or $30,000 worth of miscanthus protecting and making the wildlife on my farm be able to be protected and eat in private and be less stressed, to have higher body weight and have better antlers and have bigger fawns and a healthier way of life. And I've probably got 40,000 miscanthus rhizomes on my farm. I've probably paid 10 grand for them because I have the equipment to put them in. And then I've put nitrogen in the ground to grow corn. And every time that I have all this ground that I decided to take out of crops. Now, this is my freedom in America that Biden hasn't taken from me yet. Okay. This is still land of the free. This is still America. This is still what that flag right there represents. This is my ground. It's 100 acres. I'll be happy to share with somebody that asks, that wants to work alongside with me, iron sharpening iron. And we will always communicate and work out through a deal, right? And I think our job is to communicate. That's why we're discussing this. Where does the line end, or where is the line drawn with, if I put thousands and thousands of dollars in miscanthus, thousands and thousands of dollars in corn and beans and clover and blinds and stands, and I don't hunt my property for 5 years, and all I'm doing is protecting the wildlife, trying to grow them. Do you believe that other people should be able to come onto your property to take the things that you have? Okay, well, what if you say, no, I don't believe people should be able to come pick from your garden. Now, what if something happened and they just take the wounded fruit, right? Where is this? I don't know. That's a bad analogy, but at the end of the day, man, what's happening right now along every farm that I hunt or develop or have, places that I don't go and invade on my property. And when I say mine, things I've either paid for, worked for, or own. The people that have just permission, they don't lease, they don't add to the ground. They sit on the fence line, less than 20 yards from the fence, staring into my property. They wait for the deer to walk off the property and they shoot them. And the deer turns around and runs up back onto my property. Last year, I get a phone call. Actually, I get a guy trespassing on my property after he shoots a deer that does exactly what I'm talking about, out of the same stand that happened yesterday. He goes ahead and walks onto my property, 150 yards through everything, just never gets caught on my cameras. I just didn't have enough out at the time because I didn't think I had a problem. Next thing you know, he shows up at my house. My guys working on my house call me and say, hey, I have a guy out here that says he wounded a deer. I get there. This guy wants to go after the deer. And so I'm like, hey, tell me where it's at. I'll find it. So he goes with me. I take him. I blood trail this deer up, and I find him on my property. I stalk up on the deer, and it's a gut shot doe, and it's sitting there, and it's early October, and I have to go to his bow case, and in his bow case he has, and this is just opinion. This is just a story. This is real stuff. This person has 3 or 4 different arrows, a bunch of different broadheads, a bunch of different arrows, different weights. He's got field points on most of them in his quiver, which is not legal. But he's not actively hunting. It's in his case. So I have to help him screw on all the broadheads. I don't have to, I guess. I don't have to let him even go on my property. I can call the game warden and give him a $40 or $80 ticket because he's trespassing. Did he have his weapon? Then it's a criminal trespass, which could be a felony, right? There's all these other things. But I go, you know what? This is the first time I've met this guy. I'm going to explain to him. I'm going to have a conversation with him. We're going to come to a mutual understanding. And at this point, we go ahead and get on the side-by-side. We go through the property I haven't been on since August because I didn't want to disturb the critters. And I go down through the middle of this, and we get there, and I blood trail the deer. He gives up, and I said, we're not going to give up. We're going to find this deer. And we find the deer another half mile through the farm. We get up to it. He misses the deer a couple times. The deer takes off, goes to the edge of the neighbors. Finally, we get up to 5 yards. Now, first, he's shooting at it at 10 and 15 yards and missing the deer just laying there. I've realized at this point, now it becomes a point to where now he's on my property. We have to get this deer dead. I'm not using one of my tags. And so I let him keep shooting at it. And finally, we get an arrow in the deer. And I said, okay, now he says, I have permission from the other side. I said, okay, well, let's come in from that other side and go ahead and get it. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my work now. We had a discussion with the fact of, hey man, you have a pretty big property here. It's actually, I believe it's actually bigger than the property I own. A lot of it's fields, but a big creek and stuff. And there are so many other places that he can sit besides 20 yards on my fence line, because every deer he shoots, including the one yesterday, runs back onto my property. I don't have any stands on any of my property lines. And if I ever do, it is with my back to the other person's property, and I'm hunting into mine. And my opinion is I don't see anything wrong with that. And so I'm only shooting at animals on mine and that are traversing and coming through on my property. Now, I can't think of actually one that I have on the property line right now, but I'm just saying the intention and the implied respect is there when that stand is you can't shoot onto the other property. But when you were 20 yards and you can shoot into a property, that's a no-no in my book. And so my question for you is, where does it come with respect and where does it come with, it's not illegal. It's just, if the person, we had this scenario and I said, you're going to have to call me if this ever happens again. But I'm going to tell you right now, if that stand doesn't get moved and this continues to happen and these deer run onto my property, there's going to be a point where I don't allow you to get it. I'm going to call the game warden. Game warden's going to come get it. And in the state of Illinois, I don't have to give that deer to that guy, but I can't keep it. I don't even have to look for it. He doesn't have to look for it. So in the state of Illinois, and a lot of people will say, man, the state of Illinois is wrong. Here's the deal. The state of Illinois has a lot of problems, but I think in that category, that's one of the freedoms that we still have. And I believe that that's a good law because I don't have to let you come on my property. Now, let's rehash that again. If a guy shoots a deer and it runs onto my property, I don't have to go look for it. Number one, I don't have to let him on my property to go look for it. If he does trespass, he will get tickets. If he has weapons, he will get a felony trespass. If he has anything else wrong, they will hit him with all of that, anything that you want to do. If you can prove damage over $350, it becomes enough for a felony. Why risk it, right? But if you shoot a deer and that deer is in the property and you continue to do it and it's a repetitive thing, where's the line? This is the discussion part. So yesterday I get a phone call. I'm headed out to post up to make sure before Illinois gun season that there's purple paint on all the fence posts and that there is posted no trespassing on the entire borders of my property. As I'm heading out there, I get a phone call from this guy saying he's 20 yards on the other side of my fence in the same stand from the year before. He has just seen more deer than he's ever seen. And he had a bunch of bucks and he just couldn't not shoot this one. And buck came down your ridge, jumped the fence. And as soon as he jumped the fence, I shot him. Man, I saw that arrow. I know that arrow is good. I know this deer is dead. Can you help me? I said, don't come on my property. I will be there in a moment. I am en route. So I come down, I sneak, I use the wind. I come down on the property. I then meet him there. I then look, the stand's in the same spot, same scenario as before. The deer has jumped the fence. As soon as he gets across the fence, shoots him with an arrow. Close enough shot that he should have killed him. Instantly, the deer takes 3 bounds, jumps over the fence, and runs into a giant switchgrass field. And he says, 160-inch buck. I said, well, I've got a picture of every deer I have on camera. Was it an 8-point? I don't know. Was it a 10? I don't know. Did he have bent brows? I don't know. Did he have crab claws? I don't know. Was he brown? I don't know. Chris, I'm not good at that. I said, well, we have a problem, man. If you can shoot at an animal that you don't know what it is, but it's big enough for you, you just passed like 10 other deer. You're sitting at 20 yards facing my property, waiting for the deer to come off to shoot them, and you know they're going to go right back. So you might as well shoot them in the spine or something. I don't really know. And so I don't really know how to handle this, but I handle it as best I can. I call the game wardens, have the game wardens come with me. They meet me at the property. I discuss it with them on the phone before I go down there. What are my rights? What are my options? I live in Illinois. I own the property. Do I have to let the gentleman on my property? No. If I find the deer, do I have to give it to him? Nope, but you can't keep it. Okay, sounds good. So I can donate that animal and you'll take that animal to somebody in need. Yep. And then, so I start coming up with scenarios. This guy says deer's dead. Okay. So I go down there and meet him there. I look for blood. It says there's blood on your side of the fence. Nope. Cannot find blood on his side of the fence. He's looking. I look where the deer crossed over, 0 blood. There wasn't blood until I went down the trail next to the CRP for 50 yards. Now it looks to me like it's in the shoulder. It's in somewhere where it's not vital. I have him stay there. I went ahead and looked. I followed the deer for over 350 yards in the middle of my property and blew my entire property up. Day before gun season. I haven't been in there since I shot my buck on November 4th. And prior to that, I hadn't been there since August when I planted. So now I have this guy stand on the border. I go ahead and creep down through my property. I find blood. I find where it looks like he's chased does. I found where he crossed the creek. I lose the blood after the creek. I then body searched for a little while in the middle of the day. I figured I'd blow up my property. And I said I'd call him if I found it. I told him that there were a couple different options. One, if I found his buck, he could decide, since he doesn't pay for the property, he doesn't lease it. I said he could have a fund where he could help with the deer herd on my farm, which is the upkeep and the feed, and be as a team with me, right? With me, not against me. All right. That's one option. And then that's our deer and you can have it. Number 2, I said, you can figure out a way that we can work together, because right now I feel like you're not doing what I asked by not being further up the draw. At least if you're on a hunt with a bow, make sure that you give the deer ample time and distance for a double lung hit to take effect. I would believe that every bow hunter out there that that feels that I'm not being reasonable, you don't own property and that you probably voted blue. I'll bet you, and you think that everybody should have every deer and everybody should be able to go anywhere and everybody should be able to do whatever, make out with my wife and take the things that are mine, and I shouldn't be able to defend myself and I shouldn't be able to protect myself. I will believe that you're on that. So I really ask you to define yourself, because one of these situations is going to happen to you. You're either this guy that's trying to take from this guy and not respect the borders. And all I'm asking this gentleman to do is give this deer 100 yards from where you're going to shoot him at. If you're hunting with a bow and you're up the draw, and he has 500 yards north of him that he can be on there and still be an incredible setup to have whitetails come through there. And I've talked to him about this. I've warned him, hey man, I can't just let you keep coming on the property to get your animals. You're going to continue to do this. How are we supposed to have a relationship if you're not going to respect this? Am I supposed to go get a blind vindictively and put a blind right on the border? Am I supposed to go get 8-10 foot fence and run it for 200 yards? I don't think that's right either. I mean, these are all options. We're just talking about this. But I do believe that if you are feeling the way that everybody should be able to do everything, I'm probably not the guy for you, because I'm going to tell you the real truth. I believe that there are communication boundaries that I didn't cuss at the guy. I didn't get mad at the guy. I got to the point where I said, we're going to have a deal. We're going to have an understanding. This is only going to work if we have an understanding. I'm not saying that you can't get your deer, but there's going to have to be a way that you give back to this herd and what I'm doing on this farm. And if you don't want to, that's fine. You either are part of it or you're against it. It's real black and white for me. I'm still processing it. Didn't find the deer, so we don't have a problem. And so I went ahead and posted the whole property. Now the gun season is upon us. On that gun season, there is a different group of permission hunters on this property. And they are not ethical, or, in my opinion, ethical in what they're doing. As far as, there's a couple of them that have permission. There's a whole bunch of them that don't have permission, that are, and they're just taking from the property. That's not my business, but they do have to follow the law. They need to have written permission if they're on that property. That's an Illinois law, but the Illinois police can't make them leave the property. It's an Illinois law. Now, they can be ticketed, they can be fined, they can have their hunting privileges taken away from them if they have a gun or something that they've destroyed or have violated over $350. That's a felony. Now you don't have a gun or a weapon in Illinois. So there's a lot of things that can come from that. Now I have today, gun season. This weekend, gun season. The weekend after Thanksgiving, gun season. Now a different group of hunters comes in. I have a problem with them last year. Every day I get a phone call. Hey, I shot a doe. Doe came out of your switchgrass, went onto my field. I shot it. The doe ran, jumped in the fence, and I think we killed it, but I can't find it. And there's blood at the fence, goes in your property. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go blow up my whole property again every time, because I don't have permission on their farm that they don't own by the permission landowner. I can't go on that property to then go into my property from there to not do as much damage. So what do you do there? Do you allow them the first day? Because as I'm talking to them about it, and I said, well, I'll talk to you in the morning, I get another text the next day. Hey man, buck and a doe just ran out in the field and he was pointing away from your property. So I went ahead and shot him, and he ran back and jumped in your property. So this is two deer, same field, same 2 days in a row. This is 3 deer in a matter of a week on this same property last year. That same thing. They come out of your property, we shoot them, they run back in. At what point do you say, listen, I'm not going to allow you on my property? When does it stop? When is the line? This is the discussion. I want to hear your thoughts. I want emails. I want texts. Be nice. I'm being nice to you. Just because I said that you voted for Biden or you're wearing blue, that doesn't mean that I hate you. That just means that we have a difference of opinion. You probably aren't invited to Thanksgiving, even though my dad was a Democrat through and through, but he also had 2 strokes, and I will say that it was because of brain damage. And he passed away. So rest in peace, Dad. Really strange that my dad was so Union and Democrat, because I don't think Union and Democrat really go together anymore. I believe that, I don't know if I wouldn't be an independent, but I definitely know that I don't need a Democrat running the country. That's just where I'm at. I love a free country, man. I love the fact that I got overcharged for my criminal thing with my 2 deer thing, Indiana. The story of that will one day come out. You're not going to believe it. And I thought the country was incredible before that, when I really realized how corrupt it was on the inside. And I still believe that. But the one freedom that we do have is we do have the law that states that you can't come on my property without permission. And I think that's a good thing. And so I ask you to think about all this. I know that I'm going to get a phone call, or if they're listening to this, and I know that some of them listen to this, I know that we have them on camera trespassing. I know that there's a case against them in the state of Illinois, and I know that justice will be served. What's done in the dark will be brought to the light, just like I had to pay my price, so will they. So if you're listening to this, I would just suggest moving on to a different property, boys and girls, because it ain't going to end well for you. And so I posted the whole thing. I know for a fact they came on my property and got those deer, even though they didn't have permission, and I wanted to help them. I just wasn't going to do it in the middle of the gun season. And I found other deer that they had shot that had come on the property, blood trails and dead deer. And we have pictures on me and the neighboring property. So this is all going down. This is in the works right now. So there's your warning. But where does the line? Where's the line? I got another property. It's a bigger property. And it seems that the areas that we leave alone, that we call refuges, and we leave those sanctuaries alone. I have one that has like this big grown up area on the fence line. And when you go, it's about 15 or 25 foot up, and all of a sudden you looking like over the neighbor's fence, peeking at, let's say peeking at your daughter. Is it okay for people to build a tree house or put up a stand in their backyard, looking over your fence to watch your daughter bathing with her friends in the swimming pool? Okay, since they're kids, that would be creepy. All right, so no, that's not okay. What about if it's your wife? No, that's not okay. What if it's a stripper? Is that okay? Well, she does that for a living, so they just have to make sure that they're throwing money, right? It all comes down to semantics. I just don't think it's right or okay. Do you think it's right or okay to be looking over somebody's fence? So I have this property where both corners of it, they're looking over 20 foot over this big giant hedgerow, this fence line, into the field that we leave alone, where all of our big deer are. I think it comes down to biblically temptation. It's not good for us. It's not good for me to go sit on that fence. It's not good for me to just open up a porn site but not really look at the pictures of the videos. I don't think it's good. I just don't think it's good for any of us. I think it comes down to your character. I think it comes down to, I'm not saying you can't come get your deer, but we're going to have an understanding before I just give it to you, because you can't just keep doing things to me and my American freedom and dream and just not have an understanding, right? I really think that that's it. A boss and an employee have an understanding, a leader and somebody that's being led has an understanding, whether it's on paper, contractually, or what. I have people right now waiting for my consult certificate, explanation, expectations, and contract that this is what you're getting for this value. I haven't sent them out yet. I had a gentleman get a hold of me, man, where's my stuff? I don't want him to be mad at me. So I communicated to him. I said, listen, I got podcasts going on. It's the middle of the rut. I got gun season. I got my wife. I got my guy on my line shooting deer. I got things to do, responsibilities as an adult. And I just communicated with him, said, hey, I just want to make sure that the contract I give you has everything in there, and our expectations and everything that we're going to do, and contractually, and like what your expectations of me and what we're doing is all on paper. It's probably been the worst thing of my life to not have those things written down and we both sign and come to agreement on. So I implore you to be standing firm, not only on your faith, but also what you're willing to give in this life, where your lines are. I know you may say, it's just a deer. Don't be silly. Listen, man, it's not about that. It's about getting along with one another. It's about communicating through it. It's about, I'll play that game with you. It's just a deer. Yep, it's just a deer. Oh, you want some meat? I'll go give you some out of my freezer, but I can't let you come onto my property. Where does it stop? Where does it end? Where are we in this world? Where are we in hunting? Where are we in growing these mature deer? Do we have the freedom to continue to do that? Where's the wild animal at? Well, it's a wild animal. You can't do that. No, man, I'm not even talking about the animal anymore. I didn't say the guy can't shoot it. I didn't say the guy can't poach it in the head with a 22. I didn't say that. I'd rather have him shoot him in the 22 behind the ears and drop him illegally than to shoot him with, probably, in what I've seen, with a non-lethal kill background with a bow. I mean, I just don't think that he's proficient enough with this weapon to shoot this deer. And then all of a sudden people start going, well, man, that guy should use a crossbow. And then we have the crossbow battle. Listen, there ain't no difference between the crossbow battle and this discussion right here of where is the line. It's all in communication. It's all in expectations. It's all in contractually communicating through whatever. Am I making a bigger deal out of it than it should be? To some people, absolutely. To me, no. It's what I'm working on in my life. Communicating with my wife. She was sitting right here and she was worried about all these things, and you could tell she was getting anxious. I said, baby, I got it. I need you to go out and do your thing. I'd love to have you here and communicating and give me your thoughts. And, she fears things. She's built a little more fragile than me. I don't care if this guy hunts there. I don't care if this guy doesn't hunt there. But if he doesn't respect the property line, I will have to take action in the fact of I'll just put up a fence. I will take away the temptation for him. I will put up an 8 to 10 foot fence. I will sell the property. I will do something. But then I have that choice, because it's America. That's the freedom and expectation of what I have for myself and for my property. I want to protect what's mine, and the deer aren't mine. That is not the point of this. That is not the point. Do not take this out of right now. Fired up. People are just mad as hell. And I'm just telling you that it's not about the deer. Real easy to go. Those aren't his deer. Listen, there ain't nobody in the world knows that I can't keep them deer on my property. I know it. But you can't even keep fish in your lake because the blue herons come eat $3 at a time every time they pull out one of my bass. I can't even shoot them in America, but I can put a fence up over my lake. It might cost me $20,000, but I can put a little fence right above my water. Those little blue herons can't come eat my fish, right? That's my freedom to be able to do that with my lake. I can also let a bunch of Rottweilers chained up all the way around my lake, but they're going to poop a lot. I'm going to have to pay for them. And then I'm going to have to pay to put these junkyard dogs around. And then I'm going to have to keep them out of the sun, because then people don't want the dogs out of the sun. I'm going to have to bring them inside because they could get cold. And then, listen, my point is I can take fish. I can build the lake, which is I can build the land. I can build the lake. I can put the fish in it. I can buy the property. I can put the cover on it. I can put the food on it. I can control the fish more than I can control the deer leaving and eating those crops and staying in that bedding. But one thing I know for sure is that I'm not in control of anything, because this isn't my home. My home is in heaven. I'm just here trying to be a steward of the land. I'm trying to stand up for what I believe, and I'm trying to communicate my way through it, because the way I was taught to communicate is I would go cut down the tree that this guy's standing in. I would go to my property and shoot every deer because I have a ton of permits and can keep buying them over the counter with a bow. I'm a deadly killer. I'll go out and kill every deer on that property. I'll sell that property back for what I bought it for, and I'll move on to another property that I'm going to have the same problem with. It's not going to solve any problems. So I'm trying to bring it up and say, listen, that's not going to solve any problems. Me getting mad, me getting pissed, me having a vendetta, me doing all of these things that my flesh wants to do. Listen, I want to punch the guy in the face. Why? Was he mad at me? No, but he took something that was mine. Justice, right? That's not where we're going. I'm trying to teach you through what I'm going through. That's why we're communicating through it. I can have my opinion. Do I think you should be able to wear an orange hat with a brown brim? Yes, but that's not what the law says. I'm just trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you where I'm at. I got the choice. I can follow the rules. I cannot follow the rules. I can follow God's rules. I can not follow God's rules. I can follow the gospel. I cannot follow the gospel. But I promise you right now that all of us, our knees will hit the ground. Our heads will bow. And I know that Yahweh is my creator. I know that Jesus died for my sins, and I profess him as my Lord and Savior in my life, and I'm still in growth. I'm a work in progress. I didn't kill those big deer because I killed them. Yeah, I'm smart at deer. Yeah, I know how to traverse the woods. Yeah, I'm a pretty good shot. Yeah, I'd rather be lucky than good. I'd rather be blessed than smart. I'd rather be blessed than something that I did. I know that these things will come up, and I know the growth, and it may help one person with what they're going through, how to look at it. And I was so mad. I was fired up. Like, I'm not letting this. I called my buddy Chad, and he's a good Christian dude. And he's kind of coming to the point where I am, where he's getting these outside influence of these deer and this cool stuff that he's created. And even with brothers and nephews and everybody that maybe didn't do as much work on the deer that he does, but he's taken the choice to do the work on the deer because he loves the deer. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, how do I work through this? They didn't show up for the work days, our partners on our stuff, and maybe some of the nephews, and maybe they're fishing a little too much than they should have been working on deer. Listen, you just work through it. It's communication. It's love. Love your neighbor. He doesn't love your neighbor. He didn't say that you had to let him on your property. He said you had to love him, and to love him is communicate, to work through it. Not about the deer. I go shoot one today. I got a bunch of doe permits, got landowner permits, got shotgun permits. I got 2 counties worth of permits. Why? Because state of Illinois doesn't matter. As long as I give them the $25 for the permits, I can go buy them. I go shoot the deer. I'll go get the guy meat. And if I find his rack, if it's tagged, he can donate to my corn fund next year for all the nitrogen. I don't know. I wish Royce was here. I'd call him and ask him how much it is per acre. I know how much the seed was. I paid $350. We paid $300. Me and Kirk paid $350 a bag for corn, something like that. The nitrogen is out of this world, and then all the time and diesel and all that other stuff. So I just have my neighbor pay this, or he doesn't get to play the Chris Brackett land game. And the guys this weekend, they better watch their P's and Q's because old Green Jeans is watching. And Uncle Bubby don't have anything to do because he's all bucked out. And if he's all bucked out, then what does he have to do but try to catch and hunt poachers and trespassers and thieving varmints? It's trapping season, so I'll be running the perimeter of that farm pretty hard. And it doesn't say that you can't go walk the perimeter of your farm and take your dog for a walk and whatever, but that would be vindictive, would it not? But we try to park in situations and try to not go places to keep the deer at rest and at ease. Why would I not drive my tractor down there? Because the deer don't care about a tractor. Why wouldn't I go park it on that line, on that north line, and then hunt with valid tags on that north line that I normally don't, because I try to leave the deer alone? But if these people aren't going to leave the deer alone, why would I go leave the deer alone? It's completely legal. And I just say, hey, listen, if we can't come to an agreement, cool, we'll just hunt the same deer. It's not a big deal to me. It's just a big deal where my line is, and I want to be able to work with everybody. I want to be able to grow. And if they're not there, I'm there. And I'm imploring you right now to think about that. Have these discussions. Don't get too fired up about it, and just go ahead and work through them. This is why LandLife podcast, Chris Brackett's LandLife podcast, was made, to look at land, to look at the situations we have, to enjoy gun hunting. Make sure your guns are sighted in. Make sure we have to actually go sight in guns today because we haven't even shot them. Why? Because life's fast. It's busy. And remember, this season is a little behind where it normally is. Why? Because our dates are behind. These bucks are just getting off these does right now. These big, giant, savage, giant deer that you're going to see pictures of in the next couple of days on Facebook, they're just getting off these does as it turns cold. It's going to be awesome. But we are a week behind. Normally, man, our gun seasons are like the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. They're falling on the 17th today, boys and girls. We're just behind. Don't give up yet. Unless you're my neighbors, give up. Go to a different farm. All right. Love you all. This is LandLife. I'm Chris Brackett. Sorry for the audio or the technical video problems here on YouTube, but we'll get it worked out. It's all good. I really appreciate all the comments. I really appreciate all the reaching out saying, hey, man, this is the best outdoor podcast that's out there, best whitetail podcast. Remember, after deer season, as it slows down, we're going to start talking about prep work. We're going to start talking about what we're finding on these consults. We're going to start talking about what we're finding in shed season, where to look for sheds. We're going to start talking about products. We're going to start talking about all this other stuff. This is a year round. I'm just going to try to do it here during deer season every couple days. And I just really appreciate y'all. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Chris Brackett's LandLife. Chris Brackett LandLife. You can type in either one of them. And then you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes on Apple. And listen, I'm still looking for a production company or production assistant or interns to help me take this thing to the next level and just keep rocking and rolling. And I'd love to come in here and drop these shows and then have people take care of it and upload it and get it out there into the social media world and all these clips and all over and help produce it. And so if that's your style, if that's something that you want to do, that's your dream, or you own something that you want to be a part of something bigger and more specialer, everybody. Let's talk. Remember, give those deer plenty of time to die. You shoot them, you don't watch them drop, you give them 6 hours. You're going to find all your deer. Except if you shoot them in somewhere non-vital. But if you hit them in the guts, even with a gun, especially you boys, we're using the muzzle loaders. The bullets aren't fast enough to vaporize the inside, and they don't do enough damage, and they don't expand. Give those deer time. If you didn't find blood, don't give up searching, because they just blow right through. If you're shooting a muzzle loader and those bullets are blowing right through, if you're shooting AccuTips and some of these really hard plastic fronts, that if they hit the bone of that shoulder, that big shoulder, they are not penetrating that shoulder. You are not going to kill that deer. He holds that shoulder limping away. That deer is going to have a really tough life. So if you're shooting them and you're trying to break them down with these fast expanding light slugs like a AccuTip or these Barnes or whatever, they don't make the good slugs anymore. They make these really accurate 20 gauge and 12 gauge slugs. 12 gauge is just a different story. That's a beast, even if you shoot them with that big sucker, man. But that 20 gauge stuff that you're shooting for accuracy, these straight wall cartridges that you're shooting for accuracy, a lot of these slugs just explode. So continue to just shoot them in the lungs, man. Pop those lungs, give them a little bit of time, go pick them up. You're not going to find a lot of blood, but they're going to do enough inside the lungs that you're going to be good. If you hit them back a little far, dude, just give them 6 hours. They're not going 100 yards before they bed up. And that's my advice. So if you're just using these, I just can't say enough. If you're using these AccuTips and stuff, do not shoot them to break them down in the shoulder. That slug on those 5, 6, 7-year-old deer, they will absolutely shatter and explode. They'll break the shoulder, but they're not penetrating the lungs. Ask any Illinois outfitter about it, and they will tell you the horror stories of these AccuTip slugs, y'all. But that's it. Peace out. Thank you, guys.